The single greatest threat to your leadership, it's not something that shouts to you out there. It's something that whispers to you right here. It's called your ego. On this episode, we're going to explore why ego is not your ally. No, it's your enemy. Welcome to the Unfinished Leadership Podcast. Ego is not your ally. No, it's your enemy. And before I get much further, I just want to say again, hey, welcome to the Unfinished Leadership Podcast. On the last Tuesday of each month, I'll release a short form podcast to help you grow as a leader. 5 years ago, I started Unfinished Leadership, serving corporate leaders as well as church leaders as an executive coach. And in addition to that, I created something called Stay Ready. And the Stay Ready Journal, it's a 50-day guide to growth. But I got to tell you, beyond that, what I'm most excited to talk to people about is something that me and my friends started 13 years ago called Mission Church here in the suburbs of Chicago. It started in my house, but now we have the privilege of reaching and serving thousands of people each weekend. And so my primary place of leadership is within church leadership as a pastor, and I lead alongside some of my best friends and some of the best leaders that I have ever been around. Before we really dive into the content today, I want to be upfront on three things. Number one, if you lead anything, I'm here to help. I want to add value to your life of leadership. Number two, I follow the greatest leader who has ever led. His name is Jesus Christ. And so as you watch and listen to the Unfinished Leadership Podcast, just know my worldview and my principles of leadership, they're going to flow and come from learning from and reading about and studying the best leader who has ever led. A number of years ago at the Global Leadership Summit, they said something that stuck with me. They said, hey, armed with enough humility, we can learn from anyone. So no matter who you are, no matter what you believe, no matter what your worldview might be, I believe this, if you and I were sitting down right now together, I could learn a lot from you. And so I'm going to come to you and share this content with you. And my hope and prayer is that it adds value to your life. Number three, I am unfinished. I am. I've been leading for a long time, but I know there's so much more growth for me. And producing this podcast, it's already been a gift for me. It's forced me to sit down and really think about, all right, what would help leaders, no matter who they are, no matter what they're leading. And for episode 1, I'm like, man, what should we start with? What needs to be the foundational episode getting this leadership podcast going? And I thought about ego. And I thought about how ego is not my ally. It's not my friend. No, it is my enemy. It really is. Ryan Holiday, he writes a number of different books. And one of the books that he wrote is Ego is the Enemy. And it was about 4 years ago, my leadership coach sent me this book. He's like, hey, read this book. You need to read this book. I don't know if that was a compliment or if he's just like, hey, I get leadership. And John, you got to make sure that you understand this enemy named ego. And in the book, Ryan defines ego this way: the unhealthy belief in our own importance. And it's true, like you and I, we need to have a healthy belief in our importance. But that ego thing, it can take this whole self-importance to a really unhealthy place, to the degree that it begins to push people away, to the degree that it really affects our life and our leadership. What is ego? Well, it's the unhealthy belief in our own importance. And then I would just add to that, and the inflated view of our own ability. You have ability, I have ability, we all have ability. And here's what ego does. It becomes like that tire pump that just begins to pump up your ego to an inflated place that is unhealthy and, truth is, unhelpful. And so ego, it's not your ally, it's your enemy. And what I want to talk about here for episode 1 is really ego in 2 different ways. 3 situations where ego is going to come and begin to whisper in your ear, and also 3 stages. And so let's start with 3 situations. Ego. Unfortunately, it doesn't shout to us from a distance. I wish it did, because then you and I could really spot it, right? If ego shouted, we would know what it is. But what does ego do? It comes in close in all kinds of situations and it whispers. This is what our enemy does, ego. At the same time, humility is our friend and is our ally, and humility whispers to us as well. And so I want to contrast both ego and how it whispers to us in some different situations, and humility and how humility whispers to us in three different situations as well. Here's the first situation. Ego whispers compete when humility whispers celebrate. There's going to be different situations in your leadership life where you have an opportunity to listen to ego, and what ego is going to say is compete with them. These are teammates. These are employees. These are colleagues. Something's going to happen. There'll be a situation, and I can just tell you because I've led long enough and I've experienced this where ego has been whispering to me, compete with them, compete with them. And yet humility whispers something different. What does humility whisper? Humility whispers celebrate. Humility will help us as leaders know that, hey, there's enough room around the table for great leaders. In fact, in the book H3 Leadership, this is a book that I went through a number of years ago, and I'll kind of draw your attention to a number of resources. But Brad Lomanek, he wrote this book a while ago. And one of the things he talked about within growing this ability to be humble leaders is he said you need to write out a list of what others do better than you. It's a better than me list. It's a really cool concept. And so just think about this right now. This is perhaps a way you can apply this teaching today is sit down and write out a list of what others on your team do better than you. This is one of the ways that you and I, instead of competing, we instead can celebrate, and this affects your leadership. This actually makes people want to work with you and for you when you celebrate their accomplishments, when you celebrate their accolades and their milestones. Ego, what does it do? Well, it'll whisper compete. Humility will whisper celebrate. Number two, here's a different situation. Ego will whisper blame. Humility will whisper own. And I know this, there's going to be different situations, and there has been a lot of different situations where things have gone wrong. I've been at this a long time leading, and there's been goals we've missed. There's been things that have happened, and I just know when you miss goals, when you miss outcomes, when missteps are made, ego is going to make you want to blame everyone else. And this is what ego says, hey, blame. And yet humility says, own. It will get close, humility, and will whisper into your ear, own it. One of the greatest leaders, I think, certainly in the sports realm that's ever led before is Tim Tebow. Maybe you remember following Tim Tebow. He played for the University of Florida. And there's this famous speech that he gave after a loss to Ole Miss called The Promise. And it was a really devastating loss that they experienced. And Tim Tebow was there on camera. And everyone expected Tim Tebow to do what many leaders choose to do, those that are filled with ego, which is to blame everyone else. Instead, Tim Tebow goes on to own it. And in many ways, this is when, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, Tim Tebow became the guy. I mean, this guy is a leader of leaders. He is a humble leader. He owned it. He went on to promise, and he ended up fulfilling that promise, but he owned it. In the book, Good to Great, this resource is fantastic. I'm sure you're familiar with Jim Collins. He's one of my favorite authors. He's written some incredible books. They're all based on research. He talks about level 5 leaders in this book and the leaders that rise above the rest. And he says, when you really look at level 5 leaders, they're humble leaders. And so this is one of the ways that we go to battle every single day with this enemy called ego. It's with humility, that you and I would turn into level 5 leaders. We'd be like Tim Tebow. We'd own what we need to own. When that situation happens, when you miss that goal or when there's a misstep, what are you going to do? Well, ego is going to try to convince you to blame, while humility is going to say own. Here's the third situation. Ego will whisper their growth. Humility will whisper your growth. There's going to be a lot of different situations in your life of leadership where you're going to have folks that work on your team or work for you, or folks that you're serving, whatever it might be. And it's easy for you to become consumed with their growth instead of your own growth. And you and I that are parents, man, this is easy as parents. I'm so thrilled to be a dad, and I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I'm a lot of things, but I'm a husband and a dad, and it's easy to focus on the growth of others. And yet the best parents, they focus on their own growth first. Well, it's the same of others that lead in a different space. If you lead in a corporate space or whatever space, ego will whisper their growth. Just think about their growth plan. Spend your time thinking about their next 3 areas of growth. And isn't it an interesting thing? It's subtle, but many leaders, if they're not careful, will understand and have great clarity on how everyone else needs to grow, but they won't know how they need to grow. And humble leaders, here's what they do. They have thought about what their own growth plan needs to be. I hope the Unfinished Leadership Podcast is part of your ongoing growth plan. Once a month, you watch the content, you download the show notes, you watch this perhaps with your teammates or with friends of yours, but we need to know that you and I have a long way to go. And like I said, this was how I started the podcast. I am unfinished. This is why it's named Unfinished Leadership, because I have a long way to go. And so I need to demonstrate this kind of humility within my leadership, that I need to prioritize my own growth. I'll never forget a half Ironman I did a few years ago. I'm into triathlons, Ironman, half Ironmans, and I was getting ready to start my half Ironman up in Michigan. And I was pretty excited about it, been training for it. And I'm sitting there getting ready, not sitting, standing, getting ready to start the swim, and was talking to some people around me. And I bumped into this guy, and it was kind of hard to tell with, a wetsuit and swim cap on, but I bumped into this guy. Turns out he introduced himself to me, and it turns out that he's 78 years old. I'll never forget this. And I was astounded by this. I'm like, wait, you're 78 years old? And I began to ask him questions of like, how in the world? And this is what he told me. He said, you just got to make that choice to keep growing. What an inspiring man that man is. Well, those are the 3 situations. Now I want to talk about 3 stages. So within your life of leadership, I'm not sure what you lead, but anything that you're going to lead is going to have some different stages of leadership. It's called a life cycle. A lot of people will call it a life cycle. And there's more than 3, but I'm just going to talk about 3 stages within the life cycle. You have the beginning stage, you have the building stage, but also I want to talk about the decline stage. Of course, there's the 4th and final stage, the death stage. We're not going to talk about that. But we're going to talk about a beginning stage, building stage, decline stage. And here's why I want to talk about this, because ego shows up, as does humility, and speaks to us in these stages differently. It's a really interesting way to think about ego and humility. The voice of ego and humility will sound different depending on what stage you're in. And so perhaps you just began your company. Well, you're in the beginning stage. Or maybe you've been leading your company for quite some time and you're at cruising altitude. Things are going really well. You're in the building stage. Or you've been leading that thing for 30 to 40, 50, 60 years or something like that. You're kind of in the decline stage, perhaps. I don't know what stage you're in, but I want to walk through these here over the next few minutes. In the beginning stage, ego will say leap. Humility will whisper step. Let's talk about this. So in the beginning stage, you're just getting things going. Oftentimes what happens is we begin to compare our company that's 1 or 2 years old with a company across the street that's 40 years old. They've got all kinds of things going. Well, they're 40 years old. They're 30 years old. You're just a year old or 6 months old. And here's what happens because of comparison and ego. Ego will begin to whisper in your ear, you need to take leaps. And I've seen this happen. You've seen this happen, where leaders, they will begin to position their company or their organization in such a place where they need to hit home runs in order for this to work. Well, why did this happen? Ego. They began to compare themselves to other organizations. What they were doing is overestimating what they could do in 1 year and underestimating what they could accomplish in 5. You've heard that quote before. Well, oftentimes, if you put yourself in a position where you have to hit a home run, all of a sudden the singles and doubles don't work anymore. And now you've just put your organization at risk. Humility will say something different. It won't say leap. Humility will say step. Take the next strategic step. If you're in the beginning stage, I want you to write this down. This is so important. Don't take leaps, take steps. Others of you are in the building stage. And the building stage is really fun. It's a different kind of fun, but things are working and things are starting to scale. You actually have budget, you have margin, you have employees. Like things are going pretty well. And because things are going pretty well, in fact, things may be going very well. Ego in the building stage will get into your ear and will whisper, "Say yes. You've got the budget. You've got the margin. You've got the ability." In the church space, you've got the building now. You can do whatever you want to do. Say yes. And yet humility will get into your ear if you'll listen, and humility will encourage us to say no. Are you in the building stage? One of the things that can happen in a building stage is what Jim Collins calls the undisciplined pursuit of more. And he says this is one of the things that will lead to your demise. It's in his book, How the Mighty Have Fallen. And so we need to think about this stage, the building stage. Ego is going to say, hey, just say yes to all kinds of things. You can. But humility is going to say, no, we're actually going to be really disciplined. We're going to learn how to say no. The decline stage, man, this is hard. The decline stage is when things are on the decline. And what ego is going to get into your ear and whisper to you is hold. Meaning just like, hold on with everything that you got. We're riding this ship all the way down. Hold. While humility will get close and will whisper, help. Meaning you can get help. In the decline stage, it doesn't mean that it's over. You can actually get help. You can reach out to consultants. You can reach out to other people. You can admit, and humility will help you do this. You can admit that you don't know what to do. You can admit that we don't know how to reinvent this organization. And yet what ego will do is ego will say, no, we're not going to change. We're going to hold. And so you have an opportunity in the decline stage. What are you going to do? What voice are you going to listen to? And so it's great for us to just be thinking right now, okay, what stage are we in? Beginning, building, decline, and then begin to pay attention how ego and humility speak to us differently in those stages. I don't know what kind of situation you're in or what stage of leadership you're in right now, but here's what I do know. Ego, it's not your ally. It's your enemy. And this battle that you and I are fighting with ego, it's not a battle that we will win. It's a battle that we will fight every single day until we no longer lead anything. This is something that you and I choose to engage in every single day. And my hope and my prayer is that you and I would learn how to fight this fight, that we would listen way less to those whispers of ego, and we would listen a whole lot more to the whispers of humility. If you would, a couple things. Would you subscribe and share? Would you rate it and review it? Subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. And if you'd share it with a friend, sharing is caring. And right now you could certainly share it to a friend that maybe this could really encourage. This could really help them get unstuck. Share this with a friend. Also rate it. This is one of the ways that'll help get this out to more people. We would love for a whole bunch of people to know about the Unfinished Leadership podcast. And lastly, review it. One of the ways that I really retain information and content like this is by reviewing it. If you go to unfinishedleadership.com, you can get the show notes there where you can watch us as a team and you can review the content that you just heard. But that's all we have for episode 1. We'll see you guys next month for episode 2.